This is Think Out Loud on OPB. I'm Dave Miller. One of Katherine Lee Bates's greatest hopes in life was to write a poem that people would remember after she died. She succeeded to an extraordinary extent.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies,
for amber waves of gray, for purple mountain majesty above the fruited plain.
America.
God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood. From sea to shining sea.
Those were the iconic voices of Elvis Presley, Judy Collins, Whitney Houston, John Denver, Ray Charles, Barbra Streisand, Jennifer Lopez, and Blaine Howard singing, obviously, America the Beautiful. It's based on a poem that Bates initially wrote in the 1890s as both a celebration of our country and a plea for us to become the best versions of ourselves. As we approach the 250th birthday of the United States, we thought it was a great time to learn more about the woman who wrote the song that many people have argued should be our national anthem. I'm joined now by the Pacific Northwest filmmakers Laurence and John Graaf. Their documentary From Sea to Shining Sea is about the life of Katherine Lee Bates and the continuing relevance of her most famous work. Larry and John, it's great to have you both on Think Out Loud.
Great to be here. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.
Larry, first, why make a movie about Katherine Lee Bates?
Well, there's many slices on that. I am a native New Englander, number one, although I've lived in the Pacific Northwest for almost 32 years. John and I have both independently and together produced films that tell the American conservation story, the history of the conservation movement. We're devoted appreciators of the outdoors, but also the theme of beauty in our lives, and John might have something to say about that too. We were completing a prior film about Stuart Udall. Stuart Udall, The Politics of Beauty is the full title. And we came upon the story of Katherine Lee Bates. We both dimly knew the basics, but not more than that. And we decided that our next film after Udall would be this film about Katherine Lee Bates. We also were well aware that America 250 was approaching.
John, and so that, the impending 250th anniversary birthday, that played into this for you?
Well, yes, in a way. I mean, I don't think it was something we were thinking right at the top of our heads when we started the film, but when we were into our film, it became more and more clear to us that, yes, the timing is perfect for this. This is coming up right away, and this song could hardly be more relevant than it is today. And so, it just really worked out right.
John, why do you think America the Beautiful has become such an enduring song?
Well, sadly, part of that is, it has a beautiful melody and it's easy to sing. But I would say that sadly, part of that is because people don't really understand the song. I wish they understood it more. I came to understand a lot more in doing this program. But, the singer Brandi Carlile, who sang America the Beautiful at the Super Bowl, I think really got it right. She said in a press conference before that America the Beautiful is not a boast, it's a prayer. It's not an affirmation that America is all these wonderful things. It's an aspiration that America become these things essentially with God's help. And when you look at the song, you find out that the first verse really is extolling the beauty of America, the mountains, all of those things. But the second, third, and fourth verses are looking at the flaws in the country. The second verse is really about the Gilded Age, which Katherine Lee Bates lived in, about the gap between rich and poor, how difficult life was for the poor, for the immigrants, and so forth. The third verse is about the Spanish-American War, which Bates abhorred because she felt it was an example of imperialism, that we were trying to colonize. We, a former colony, were trying to colonize other countries, and she reacted very negatively to that. And so she writes, America, America, God, mend thine every flaw, confirm thy soul in self-control. And this was a point she made. And then the fourth verse about Alabaster Cities was based on her trip to the 1893 Chicago World Exposition, where she saw this beautiful white city, but it was surrounded by slums and by people who were suffering and starving. And she wanted to see an Alabaster City in America undimmed, as she puts it, by human tears. She wanted us to really be inclusive and make the best of our country. She wasn't saying we were there yet.
There's a lot to dig into that you just got there, but I want to go back to Katherine Lee Bates's early years. Larry, like you, she was a New Englander. She was born in Falmouth, Massachusetts, a coastal town full of ships and sailors, some of whom you all note in the movie came from far away. How did that affect her understanding of the world?
She had a sense of the tragic element of life, unquestionably. She did not exactly grow up wealthy. Her father was a minister. She grew up in the church. She was surrounded by families with seafaring fathers, and sometimes those fathers did not return. And families had to deal with the consequences. She also was, she was well aware of her Revolutionary War history, also the Civil War history. When she was...
it wasn't history for her.
Well,
right?
Correct.
Yeah.
It wasn't, indeed, it wasn't history for her. It was Civil War knowledge.
Yeah.
And Abraham Lincoln was a childhood hero. He clearly had a huge impact on her whole life, and she certainly held up to his ideals. So all of those elements came together. She wrote one, as John will gladly cite to you, she wrote rather compelling poems and stories as a young person. That is detailed in our film. And she was already referencing Native Americans at that point, her sympathy for Native Americans, the Wampanoag peoples of the southeastern Massachusetts and Cape Cod, and she had some contact with them. Certainly there was more of a population presence then than there is now, but they are still there, I can guarantee you. All of those elements came together. She was born to be a poet, it's quite clear. Subsequently, later on, I know you were asking about her youth, but subsequently she, of course, became a Chaucer scholar and a renowned professor of English literature at Wellesley College.
And then, John, as a professor, she took a fateful, famous trip to Colorado. Can you tell us about the trip that prompted the beginning of the writing of this poem?
Yes, Bates and her lifelong partner, Catherine Coleman, another professor at Wellesley College, were invited to teach summer school in 1893 at Colorado College in Colorado Springs. And she went out there on the train, met her colleague in Chicago, but on the way she stopped at Niagara Falls, which really showed for her the beauty of America. She followed along the Great Lakes, met her partner in Chicago, where they toured the World Columbian Exposition and saw the Great White City and the slums around it, and then traveled west through the wheat fields of Kansas, seeing the beautiful wheat fields and so forth, to Colorado Springs at the foot of the Rocky Mountains. And after being there and teaching her classes there, she took a trip up to the top of Pikes Peak on a mule, basically, in a little, what was called a prairie wagon, part of it. And on the top, she was so struck by the beauty of the country, the mountains to the west, the plains to the east, that the words kind of came to her that later became the song, America the Beautiful.
So I want to turn to some of the original lines that were in one of the drafts of the poem. She wrote, America, America, God shed thy grace on thee, till selfish gain no longer stain the banner of the free. Larry, what prompted her to write that?
Well, the Gilded Age. She was certainly struck by the Gilded Age. These extreme economic inequities of the Gilded Age. It was very evident to her. She was already, as a Wellesley College professor, involved with the settlement house movement. She and colleagues of hers helped establish the Dennison House, which was, I believe, the first settlement house in Boston, to support immigrant women and children, to improve the quality of their lives. She knew about the good work that was going on. Jane Addams, the Hull House in Chicago at that time. This was the beginning of the social reform era. as John already called attention to, she was certainly struck by the visible slums not that far away from the alabaster cities of the World Columbian Exposition. So she wanted to address material inequities and her concerns that material greed was dominating American society at the time.
How much did the poem evolve before it became the iconic poem that is now the text of the song sung at baseball games and, all over the place?
Well, I think I'll let John handle that. It did go through several iterations. She herself wrote quite a few new lines, dropped others, changed some of the phraseology. John might be able to give a more precise answer. John?
Well, I think she wanted to make the song more metaphorical and less straight out, like till selfish gains, a little straightforward. She also wanted to make it more singable because when she wrote it, it was a poem and she didn't know people were going to start singing it. But as soon as it came out, the first version, people started singing it. And there were 75 different versions of how people sang the song. And so I think she wanted to make it as singable as possible. And it really fit the melody by Samuel Augustus Ward that it was later part of. But certainly the big change, there were minor changes, as Larry points out, after 1895 when it was first published. But the big changes came after the Spanish-American War. She was truly abhorred by she truly abhorred the Spanish-American War, particularly the follow-up war in the Philippines, in which she saw that American soldiers were slaughtering poor peasants who wanted nothing more than their freedom and their independence. And she wrote powerful poems about that. And that really made the third verse what it was, a strong, and those words, confirm thy soul in self-control, were not merely about imperialism. They were also a reference to the materialism of the Gilded Age, that we wanted too much, that we were too obsessed with materialism. She changed the lines, till selfish gain no longer stain the banner of the free, to America, America, may God thy gold refine, saying we need to have a different idea of wealth, that wealth was about community, about care, about beauty, about welcoming the people who were coming. It was not just about money.
Even if she softened and maybe made slightly more metaphorical some of these lines, she was, as you're arguing, she had a lot of political positions, pro-immigrant, anti-imperialist, pro-suffragist, anti-war, that were absolutely at odds with the dominant power structures of the day. Did that get in the way of the spread of America the Beautiful?
I don't think so. And by the way, it wasn't at odds with her fellow faculty at Wellesley College. That was a common theme that they all shared. And I dare say at wide, even in New England literary circles and intellectual circles at that time. So it wasn't that much at odds among the community that she was a part of.
Even if it was at odds, say, with Teddy Roosevelt or others.
Yes. On the Spanish-American War, she certainly took issue with Teddy Roosevelt when he was prior to becoming president. But there was the social reform. This was the social reform era. There were many individuals across the United States, influencers of the day, who were deeply involved with supporting the same causes that she supported.
One of the things that strikes me, John, is, and you touched on this earlier, talking about this as a prayer in Brandi Carlile's words, but just how religious this song is. And it explicitly has pleas for God to help us in every stanza. The music was written by a church organist and choir master. How do you think about this religiosity in the context of a kind of unofficial national anthem?
Well, I think Bates was a religious person, not so traditionally religious. In fact, at one point in her life, she wasn't going to go back to teach at Wellesley College because the trustees were going to require that every professor pledge their Christian faith, take an oath pledging their Christian faith. And she said, that's against the whole idea of the separation of church and state, and I'm not going to do it. I don't believe in that. And the trustees backed down, and she came back to teach. We should understand that at that time, there were many religious people who firmly believed, not like Christian nationalists today, but who firmly believed in the separation of church and state. The Pledge of Allegiance is the best example, I think, of this period. It was written in 1892, also in Boston, by a minister, a socialist minister named Francis Bellamy, who was alarmed by the way immigrant children were being treated in the Boston schools, being bullied by American-born kids. And he wrote the pledge as something that these kids could all say together so they would feel that they were all one group, that they were together, with lines like, one nation indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, he specifically did not put anything about religion in that pledge, and he insisted that it not be there because this was a pledge for everybody regardless of their faith. The words "under God" were not put into the pledge until the McCarthy era in 1954.
One of the striking moments in the documentary, Larry, is that Bates made a decision, despite the immense popularity early on from the song and all of these folks who said, hey, we want to license it, we want to put it to music. She made not a penny from it. Why not?
Again, it was part of her, broadly, her Christian orientation, her deep commitment to the sense of community in Wellesley, in New England, and to her nation. And she didn't feel it was and given her, she didn't describe herself as a Christian socialist, but I will tell you she was surrounded by a few of them, one or two in particular. I would name one, Vida Scudder, who very much self-identified that way at Wellesley. And the idea of making a profit off this marvelous poem that became a beloved hymn just, I think, was beyond acceptability for her.
John, how successful?
$5 for
$5. Okay, there you are.
$5 for the poem when it was first published.
Right.
Yeah.
John, how serious have efforts to turn this into the national anthem? How serious have they been over the years?
Well, it has been fairly serious at times. It was certainly seriously considered in 1930 when a national poll was taken that between this song and Star Spangled Banner as to which Americans thought should be our national anthem. And America the Beautiful outpolled the Star Spangled Banner 2-1. But the next year, 1931, Congress, feeling that America the Beautiful was just not enough of a martial song, not militaristic enough, in fact, decided to go with the Star Spangled Banner. Many people have tried to change that, especially Ray Charles, the singer who loved the song and does certainly one of the most well-known renditions of it. He lobbied Congress for 6 years to try to get them to turn it into our national anthem. So far, of course, all those efforts have been unsuccessful. I hope that they come back again.
John and Larry, thanks very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to join you today, Dave.
Thank you. My pleasure.
John Graaf wrote and directed the documentary From Sea to Shining Sea. Larry Cotton was one of the producers. Our production staff includes Malia Fass, Rolly Hernandez, Gemma DiCarlo, senior producer Allison Frost, and managing producer Shiraz Sadiq, Naleen Silva, and Layla Isbell engineered the show from the Gert Boyle Studio. Our technical director is Stephen Cray, and our executive producer is Sage Van Wing. Thanks so much for tuning in to Think Out Loud on OPB and KLCC. I'm Dave Miller. We'll be back tomorrow.
Think Out Loud is supported by Steve and Jan Oliva, the Rose E. Tucker Charitable Trust, Ray and Marilyn Johnson, the Susan Hammer Fund of Oregon Community Foundation, and the Lang Svengard Family Fund.